Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.
The girl inherited from her grandfather only an old wooden box and stood frozen while the other grandchildren divided up apartments and summer houses. But when she looked into the box's false bottom, a phone call shattered the silence of the small dorm room. Laura reached for the old mobile phone lying on the edge of the cluttered desk, covered in notes and textbooks. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Hello," she answered, pressing the phone to her ear while flipping through her textbook. "Laura?" An unfamiliar male voice came through. "This is Tomas Espejo, your grandfather's neighbor." Something in his tone made Laura freeze. Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Yes, it's me. Did something happen?" "Laura," the man's voice trembled, "German passed away last night." The world around her suddenly lost its clarity. Laura sank onto the bed, unable to feel her own body. A lump rose in her throat, making it hard to breathe. How? How did it happen? Was all she managed to choke out. "He passed away quietly in his sleep. Didn't suffer. I came by in the morning to check on him and the ambulance has already come, everything's been taken care of. You need to come." Laura hung up but remained sitting motionless. Her grandfather. Her grandfather, the only person who had truly loved her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she didn't even try to wipe them away. The evening bus crawled slowly, stopping at every stop. Laura leaned her forehead against the cold glass, staring at the flickering city lights outside. Her mind stubbornly dragged her back into her childhood. She was 7 when Ramon was born, small, chubby, with bright blue eyes. He instantly became the center of their parents' universe. Laura remembered how, at first, she tried to attract their attention. She drew beautiful pictures, carefully traced letters in her notebooks, even learned to braid her hair by herself. "Mom, look, I got an A," she would shout, running into the apartment. "Good job," her mother would reply absent-mindedly, never taking her eyes off Ramon as she played with him on the rug. "Leave your diary on the table. Dad will look at it later." But Dad never looked. He would come home from work, immediately scoop little Ramon into his arms, toss him up toward the ceiling, kiss his chubby cheeks. By the time he remembered his older daughter, she was already asleep in her room, hugging a pillow wet with tears. Over time, Laura accepted it. She learned to be invisible, quiet, proper. She never asked for new toys, never whined about clothes, packed her own school bag, and did her homework. Her parents seemed almost relieved, one less problem. The only bright spot in her life was her grandfather German, her mother's father. He visited often, always bringing Laura small gifts, a chocolate bar, a colorful hair clip, a book of fairy tales. Most importantly, he truly talked to her, looking her in the eye and listening to her answers. "Laura, how's school? Made any new friends?" And she would tell him everything, about the strict math teacher, about Anna, the girl who sat next to her, about how she memorized a poem and recited it in front of the whole class. Her grandfather would look at her with such pride and attention that Laura's heart would warm. Only with him did she feel special, loved. Then came the day that changed everything. Laura remembered it in the smallest detail. It was April, and a cold rain was drizzling outside. She was sitting in her room doing homework when she heard the doorbell ring. It was her grandfather. But something in his face made her uneasy. It was serious, almost stern. Soon her mother arrived, briskly walking into the living room where her father was waiting. Ramon wasn't home that day. He had been taken to his paternal grandparents. "Hi, Dad," her mother's voice sounded tense. "Did something happen?" Laura stepped out of her room and stopped at the living room door. She hadn't intended to eavesdrop, she only wanted to ask if she could go outside to play. But what she heard made her freeze. "Sandra, I came to talk about Laura," her grandfather's voice sounded unusually strict. "What about her?" Her mother's voice was filled with nothing but weariness and irritation. "Did she get into trouble at school again?" "No, Sandra. She's not getting into trouble. She's just a child who needs love and attention from her parents. There was a pause. Laura held her breath. Dad, please don't start. Everything's fine. We take care of her. She has everything she needs. Everything she needs? Her grandfather's voice rose. Sandra, she lives like a shadow in her own home. You and Christian adore Ramon, but Laura. Dad, her mother interrupted, you don't understand. Ramon needs a lot of attention. And Laura? She's independent, smart, no trouble at all. So you admit you pay her less attention? I didn't say that. But it's the truth, Sandra. I see the way she looks at you and Christian when you're playing with Ramon. There's so much longing in her eyes. For heaven's sake, Dad. Don't dramatize. We have a normal family. Ramon just needs more care because he's younger. And what about her clothes? Why is she wearing old hand-me-downs while Ramon gets everything new? We're barely making ends meet, her mother said, her voice growing more irritated. Ramon is growing. He needs things. And Laura doesn't? Her grandfather's voice cracked with desperation. Sandra, what's happening? You were always a kind, sensitive girl. How can you not see that your own daughter is suffering? A heavy silence fell. Laura pressed her palms to her burning cheeks. Her heart pounded wildly. Dad. Her mother finally said quietly. I know I'm avoiding it. It's just. Sometimes I feel like there's something wrong with Laura. She's so different. Serious, quiet. Ramon is lively and easy to be around. But Laura? I don't know how to connect with her. Sandra, she's your daughter, her grandfather's voice trembled with pain. She's just different, not defective. Laura wanted to run, hide, not hear any more of it. But her feet were rooted to the floor. Dad, stay out of it, her mother's voice grew harsh. We'll handle our children ourselves. Handle it? Her grandfather gave a bitter laugh. When? When Laura closes herself off completely. When she stops hoping for your love. Oh, stop being so dramatic. Her mother sighed irritably. We love her. We just don't have much time, work, the house, Ramon. Sandra, she's your daughter, her grandfather nearly shouted. Why are you dividing your children into favorites and leftovers? Dad, you don't understand, her mother's voice shook with tension. We're just trying to survive. Then why have another child if you can't handle the first? Laura flinched at those words. Was she unwanted? A burden? Dad, enough, her mother said wearily. We'll manage. Manage? Her grandfather sighed heavily. This isn't about money, Sandra. Laura needs your love, not just financial support. Dad, I'm tired. Everything's fine. Laura doesn't complain. Of course she doesn't. She's afraid to upset you, afraid to lose even the scraps of attention you offer her. Footsteps approached, and her mother appeared in the doorway. Seeing Laura, she froze for a moment, something like guilt flashing in her eyes, only to be replaced by the usual tiredness. Laura? You heard everything? Laura didn't answer, just nodded, lowering her eyes. Her mother nervously ran a hand through her hair. Maybe it's for the best, she said, pulling an envelope from her bag and handing it to her father. Here. This is for the first little while. Christian and I thought about it. Laura will stay with you for now, Dad. Temporarily, of course. Her grandfather took the envelope silently, his face turning to stone. Temporarily? Well, yes, until things settle down. Ramon needs more attention right now. He's often sick, and it's hard for us. What about Laura's school? Her friends? His voice was quiet but sharp as steel. She can transfer. There's a good school near your house. As for friends, her mother faltered. She's not very social, you know that. Laura stood frozen. Inside, everything felt hollow and silent, as if something inside her had snapped. "Fine, Sandra," her grandfather finally said. "Let's call it what it is. But don't lie to yourself or to me. This isn't temporary, and we both know it. Dad, please." "Enough," he turned to Laura. "Pack your things, Laura. You'll live with me. There's plenty of room. A good school nearby. You'll have new clothes, books, everything you need." Her mother flinched as if slapped. "Dad, I didn't say." "It's fine, Sandra," he interrupted. "Go handle your own affairs. Laura and I will manage." The door slammed. Her mother left without saying goodbye, without a hug, without a word. Laura looked up at her grandfather. He looked old and tired. "Grandpa, she's not coming back, is she?" "No," the man sighed, his back hunched. That day, they packed her things, a few clothes, some books, her old doll, and went to her grandfather's apartment across the city. It was small, 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, a worn-out bathroom. But it was clean and cozy. There were framed photos on the walls, neat curtains on the windows, a vase with dried flowers on the coffee table. "Here's your room," her grandfather said, opening the door to a small, bright room with a bed, a desk, and a bookshelf. "It used to be my study, but now it's yours. Tomorrow we'll get a new bedspread, any one you want. And new curtains." Laura stood silently in the middle of the room, hugging her doll. "Make yourself at home," her grandfather ruffled her hair. "I'll put the kettle on and make some sandwiches. You must be hungry." Laura nodded, even though she didn't feel like eating. When her grandfather left the room, Laura sat down on the bed and looked around. The room was clean and tidy, but somehow impersonal. Yet this was her room now. Her new home. That evening, when she was already lying in bed, her grandfather sat down on the edge of it. "You know, Laura, everything's going to be fine," he said softly, as if sharing a secret. "We'll manage. We might not have as much money as your parents, but we'll have enough for everything we need. And sometimes we'll even go to the movies, ride the carousels. In the summer, we'll go to the country house. There's lots of wild strawberries there. You'll pick them yourself." He stroked her hair gently. "And I have albums full of old photos. Your mother's in there as a little girl, and me as a young man. I was quite the handsome guy," he winked, trying to make her smile. "We can look through them tomorrow, if you want." Laura nodded silently, then suddenly asked, "Grandpa, why don't they love me?" Her grandfather froze, his face turning serious. "Laura, they do love you, it's just, they don't know how to show it," he said slowly, carefully choosing his words. "Some people, they don't understand that love isn't just something you feel, it's something you have to express. Your parents, they're confused. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You're a wonderful girl." "But they really love Ramon," Laura said stubbornly. "You can tell." Her grandfather sighed. "You know, everyone has their own path in life. Yours, for now, is alongside me. And I love you very, very much, and I'll always be here for you. I promise." That night, Laura couldn't fall asleep for a long time. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how her life had changed forever. But somehow, next to her grandfather, she wasn't afraid of those changes. And truly, life with her grandfather turned out to be completely different from what she had known before. Here, they asked her what she wanted for breakfast, which dress she liked more, which book she wanted to read before bed. Here, she was not a shadow, but a living person whose wishes and opinions mattered. Her grandfather enrolled her in a new school, bought her a beautiful backpack and a pencil case with colored pencils. Every morning he walked her to school, and after classes, he met her at the gate. In the evenings, they made dinner together, then her grandfather would check her homework, and before bed, he would read aloud to her. Even though they lived modestly, his pension was small, and money from Laura's parents came irregularly. Laura never felt deprived. Because the most important thing she had lacked before, love and attention, she now had in abundance. And so they stayed together, just the two of them, an old man and a little girl. They lived modestly on his pension, sometimes went to the movies with discounted tickets, and in the summers they went to the country house to harvest fruits and vegetables. Grandpa was frugal, but he always found a way to buy his granddaughter an ice cream or a new notebook for school. The bus jerked to a halt. Laura flinched, snapping back from her memories into reality. Outside the window, the familiar house came into view. Her stop. She wiped her tears and stood up. It was time to say goodbye to the person who had become closer to her than her own father. Laura's life with her grandfather German quickly settled into a peaceful rhythm. Their daily routine was well organized, not out of strictness, but more from her grandfather's habitual love of order. They woke up at 7 a.m., breakfasted promptly at 7:30, and then it was off to school and work. Despite being retired, her grandfather continued working part-time as a consultant at a technical bureau, going there 3 times a week. "I can't just sit around doing nothing, Laura," he would say, carefully tying his one good tie. "The brain has to stay active, or else it rusts like an old machine without oil." Their breakfasts were simple: oatmeal with berries, cheese sandwiches, coffee with apple jam that Grandpa made himself from apples from their country house. During breakfast, the radio was always on: news, classical music, sometimes programs about science and technology. "Listen carefully, Laura, and remember," Grandpa would lift a finger when something interesting came on. "The world doesn't stand still. You have to keep up." They didn't have much money. His pension, his small earnings, the rare transfers from Laura's parents, it all went into a carefully managed budget that Grandpa divided with mathematical precision. "Look here," he would say, laying out a worn notebook on the kitchen table, with all the expenses neatly written inside. "This is for utilities, this for food, this for your clothes and school supplies. And this sum here, we're saving." "Saving for what, Grandpa?" Laura would ask, peering at the numbers. "For a rainy day, sweetheart. Life is unpredictable, you always need a reserve. And also for happy things, like movies, ice cream, maybe even a trip somewhere." And indeed, despite their modest budget, they regularly went to the movies, using pensioner discounts for morning showings on weekdays. In the summer after school, Laura often stopped by the bureau to fetch her grandfather, and they would go to the park to eat ice cream while sitting on a bench by the duck pond. Their little apartment always sparkled with cleanliness. Grandpa had taught Laura the importance of order, everything in its place, dishes washed right after meals, dust wiped, plants watered. "Order in the house means order in the mind," he loved to say. "And remember, Laura, there's no such thing as men's or women's work. There's just work that needs doing." He cooked, washed, ironed, and fixed everything that broke around the house, and slowly, he taught Laura to do the same. By the age of 12, she could make soup, by 14, bake a pie, and by 16, fix a broken faucet. In the evenings, after all the housework was done, they would often sit in the living room, Grandpa in his old armchair with its worn armrests, Laura on the couch with her textbooks. Sometimes they sat in silence, each busy with their own things. But more often, Grandpa told stories from his life. Laura especially loved the old photo hanging on the living room wall, the one of Grandpa as a young man in uniform standing next to a tank, the picture yellowed with age, framed in simple wood. She often asked him to tell the story behind it. "It was 44, Grandpa would begin, his eyes warming with the memory. "I had just graduated from military school and been sent to the front. A young engineer, full of ideas. But out there, it wasn't about ideas, it was about survival. And saving others." He rarely spoke of the most terrible moments of the war. More often he told her about the people he served with, about the machines he repaired. "You see, Laura, a tank isn't just a machine. It's like a living thing, complicated, temperamental. But if you treat it with care, it won't let you down. I could feel my tank like it was alive, I could hear when something was off. I'd work on it late into the nights, but when it came time for battle, it ran like clockwork." After the war, Grandpa worked at a secret facility, developing new machinery. He couldn't share many details, it was classified, but sometimes, on special evenings, he would drop a few hints. You know, Laura, I could have become a rich man. They offered me a big prize for one invention. But I refused. Why, Grandpa? Laura would ask, wide-eyed. Because it wasn't just my invention, it was the work of our whole team. I only added the final touch. But management wanted to reward me alone and leave the others out. I said either all of us or none. And what happened, Grandpa? Nothing, he would smile his gentle smile. No one got rewarded. But at least I kept my conscience clean. You see, Laura, money comes and goes. But you have to live with your conscience your whole life. These evening talks were a real school of life for Laura. Grandpa didn't preach or lecture, he simply shared his experiences and let her draw her own conclusions. When summer came, they went to the country house. A small 600 square meter plot in a garden community, inherited from Grandpa's old workplace. The old wooden cottage with a veranda, an apple orchard, beds of vegetables and berries, it all required constant care. Laura loved waking up at the country house. In the city apartment, there was always the noise of traffic, buses, and neighbors. Here, it was birdsong, rustling leaves, and the peaceful hum of bees over the raspberry bushes. Up you get, sleepyhead. Grandpa would call, poking his head into the tiny attic room. The sun is high, and the garden's waiting. They would rise with the sun, have breakfast on the veranda, fresh eggs and milk from the neighbor's cow, then head to the garden to work. Grandpa taught Laura everything: how to tell a weed from a useful plant, when to water the tomatoes, how to tie up the cucumbers. Look, Laura, he would say, the earth is like a living thing. Give it care and attention, and it will give back tenfold. But if you're lazy with it, it will be lazy too. By midday, when the sun became too hot, they would retreat into the shade of the orchard. Grandpa would do repairs, there was always something to fix, while Laura cooked lunch on a kerosene stove. In the evenings, they sat on the bench by the fence, sipping strawberry juice and watching the sunset. Those moments were the happiest, quiet, peaceful, filled with a deep sense of rightness and harmony. Sometimes, neighbors would visit, mostly other retirees like Grandpa. They brought homemade wine or honey from their own beehives, and they would sit on the veranda, chatting leisurely. German, a plump, kind-eyed neighbor named Elisa would say, "You have golden hands. Look at the beauty you made from a simple piece of wood." Grandpa would wave her off modestly. "Oh, it's nothing, Elisa. Just a simple shelf for your jars. I just like things to be neat and pretty." And it was true, everything Grandpa touched became not only functional but beautiful. He carved patterns into the window frames, made ornate shelves, even the garden beds were lined up like soldiers. One summer, when Laura was 14, Ramon showed up at the country house. Their father brought him in his shiny new foreign car, looking strange and out of place on the old country road among beat-up vehicles and elderly gardeners. "Here you go, Dad, one more grandson for you," he said, helping Ramon pull a big sports bag from the trunk. "Let him breathe some fresh air for a week or two." Grandpa stood at the gate, wiping his hands on his work apron. "Well then, grandson, welcome," he said, shaking the 13-year-old Ramon's hand. "Laura, show your brother where he'll be sleeping." Their father left quickly, leaving Ramon in their care. Laura led her brother inside, showing him a small room with a folding bed. "It's cramped here," Ramon wrinkled his nose, glancing around the simple furnishings. "And hot. Don't you have air conditioning?" Laura chuckled. "What air conditioning?" "Open the window, that's your air conditioner." "Do you at least have a TV?" Ramon asked, pulling a brand new music player and headphones from his bag. "We have one, but it's black and white and only gets 2 channels." "That's awful," Ramon flopped down on the bed. "Why did Dad even bring me here? He should have sent me to camp instead." Laura shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe he wanted us to get to know each other better." Ramon gave her a critical look. "What's there to get to know? You're my sister." Though it's weird that you live here and not at home with us. It's not that weird, Laura replied quietly. I like it here. The days with Ramon at the country house dragged on slowly and awkwardly. He stubbornly refused to help with any chores. I have allergies, he whined when Grandpa asked him to pick strawberries for an afternoon snack. Allergies to what, grandson? Grandpa asked, raising an eyebrow. Pollen, dust, everything. Ramon sneezed dramatically. Anyway, I came here to rest, not to work. Back in the day, we believed you had to work in summer to have something to eat in winter, Grandpa replied calmly, without the slightest hint of reproach. That was your time, Grandpa, Ramon rolled his eyes. Now you can buy everything. Grandpa didn't argue, just shook his head and went off to pick berries himself. Laura followed him, anger bubbling inside her. Why does Ramon get away with everything? Why can he say things like that? That evening, while they were having dinner on the veranda, Ramon suddenly asked, Grandpa, is it true you used to be some big shot? Dad said you worked at some secret place. Grandpa smiled. Not a big shot, grandson. I was just an ordinary engineer. Yes, the work was secret, but that's not what matters. What matters is not where you work, but how you do your job. How much did you make? Was it good money? Ramon was clearly only interested in the material side. For those times, it was decent. Grandpa broke off a piece of bread. But I never chased money. It was important to me that my work helped people. Ramon snorted. Helping people. What about making a living? Dad says the most important thing is to earn well, then you'll have respect and everything else. Grandpa looked at his grandson thoughtfully. You know, Ramon, money is just a tool. Like a hammer or a saw. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to destroy something valuable. It all depends on who's using it, and for what purpose. Here we go again with the fairy tales, Ramon rolled his eyes. Just like our school lectures. Laura saw Grandpa press his lips together for a moment, but his voice remained calm. They're not fairy tales, Ramon. They're life experience. You'll understand when you're older. The week dragged on painfully. Ramon spent his days lying on the folding bed with his music player, playing video games, or wandering off to the village shop for soda and chips. In the evenings, he would call their father to complain about the boredom and lack of entertainment. Finally, on Sunday, their father arrived. He pulled up to the gate in his shiny car, honked the horn, and stepped out, tall, wearing an expensive suit, a gold watch flashing on his wrist. So, son, had a good rest? He asked, ruffling Ramon's hair. I guess, Dad, Ramon muttered. Can we just go home now? Laura stood off to the side, invisible, just as she always was around her parents. Her father cast a disinterested glance at her. Studying well? He asked without looking her in the eye. Yes, Laura answered softly. I'm doing well. Good, he nodded, then turned to Grandpa. Thanks for looking after the boy. Here, he handed Ramon an envelope. What's this? Ramon asked, peeking inside. Compensation for moral damage, his father smirked, glancing at the garden beds. We didn't send you to a fancy English school just to have you digging in the dirt. Grandpa said nothing, only watched them drive away. When they were gone, he sighed heavily. That's how it is, Laura. Some respect hard work. Others only worship money. That evening they sat on the veranda for a long time, drinking mint tea and watching the stars. Grandpa was pensive, then he suddenly said, You know, Laura, I don't judge your parents. Everyone chooses their own path. But it's a pity they don't understand the most important thing. What's that, Grandpa? That a person's worth isn't measured by money. It's measured by their deeds, their attitude toward others, their ability to love and to show compassion. It's hard to explain in words. But you, I think, already understand it. He paused, then added, Never envy the rich, Laura. Money brings responsibility, often unbearable. It changes people, and not always for the better. I've seen many who lost themselves chasing wealth. And you, Grandpa? Did you ever want to be rich? He smiled his gentle smile. I wanted to, once, when I was young. But later I realized that real wealth isn't bank accounts, cars, or houses. Real wealth is the ability to be happy with what you have. Like now, sitting here, drinking juice, looking at the stars. Isn't that wealth? Laura nodded, feeling warmth fill her heart from these simple words. At that moment, she understood she truly was rich, rich with her grandfather's love, his wisdom, the life lessons he so generously shared with her. The years flew by unnoticed. Laura grew up into a serious, thoughtful young woman. School wasn't easy. Children quickly spot those who are different. Laura's clothes were always clean and neat, but obviously not from expensive stores, rather bought from markets. Grandpa simply couldn't afford more. "It's all right, sweetheart," Grandpa would say when she came home with a downcast look. "It's not what's outside that matters, it's what's inside. And you're the best there is." After school, Laura enrolled in a teacher's college. It was a conscious decision. She had always loved working with children, helping them discover their talents. "That's the right choice, Laura," Grandpa approved. "Being a teacher isn't just a job, it's a calling. Passing on knowledge, shaping character, there's nothing more important." Life flowed quietly and steadily. Grandpa grew older but remained energetic and full of life. Sometimes they received news from her parents and Ramon. He had graduated from a prestigious school and entered an economics university, preparing to become a financier. "Well, good luck to him," Grandpa would say when they received the rare New Year's postcards. Everyone has their own path. Their own life remained modest but full. Summers at the country house, winters filled with books, occasional theater trips with discounted tickets, and long tea-time conversations. Laura never felt deprived. With her grandfather, she had everything money couldn't buy: love, understanding, wisdom. Thus they lived, an old man and a girl, understanding each other without words, valuing every day spent together. Neither knew that fate was preparing a new turn that would change everything. Laura was finishing her final year at the teacher's college. Ahead lay her thesis defense and then a job at a school. She had already completed her internship and knew for certain she had made the right choice. Children naturally gravitated toward her, and she could find a common language even with the most difficult students. "You have a gift, Laura," Grandpa would say, flipping through her lesson plans. "A real gift for teaching. There aren't many like you nowadays." That day, she returned home later than usual, having stayed at the library working on her thesis. Opening the door, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Grandpa usually met her at the door, asking about her day. Now the apartment was silent. "Grandpa?" Laura called out, kicking off her shoes. There was no reply. Her heart skipped a beat. She checked the kitchen, empty. She looked into the living room and froze. Grandpa was lying on the couch, pale, his eyes closed. "Grandpa!" Laura rushed to him, grabbing his hand. It was cold, but there was still a faint, uneven pulse. She called an ambulance and ran around the apartment gathering documents, medicine, warm clothes. When the doctors arrived, Grandpa had regained consciousness, but he was very weak. "Stroke," the doctor, an older man with tired eyes, said. "He needs urgent hospitalization." At the hospital, Laura spent the whole night on a hard chair in the corridor. By morning, the duty doctor approached her. "His condition is stable but serious. The stroke was severe. We'll fight, but you must understand," he didn't finish, but Laura understood everything. She only returned home to grab a few things, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, and went straight back to the hospital. She had to miss classes, but her professors were understanding and allowed her to submit her work later. The days at the hospital blended into an endless cycle of anxiety and waiting. Grandpa drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctors did everything they could, but progress was slow. He must have been sick for a long time but kept it hidden, said the head physician, an elderly man with a gray beard. Hypertension, heart problems. At his age, the body simply can't cope. Laura never left her grandfather's side. She wiped him with wet cloths, fed him with a spoon, and talked to him even when he was unconscious, hoping he could hear her voice. "You're his granddaughter?" a nurse once asked, watching Laura gently lift Grandpa's head to help him drink. "Yes," Laura replied. "He's lucky," the nurse sighed. "Many here have children who don't even call, let alone visit." After 2 weeks, Grandpa improved. He could sit up and talk, though his right hand was weak and his speech slow. One evening, when they were alone in the hospital room, he said, "Laura, we need to talk." Something in his tone made Laura tense up. "What is it, Grandpa?" "I don't have much time left, Laura," he spoke slowly, struggling with the words. "I can feel it." "Grandpa, don't say that," Laura squeezed his hand. "You'll recover. The doctors said you're making progress." "Doctors say a lot of things," he smiled weakly. "But I know my own body. My heart is failing. So listen carefully." Laura froze, afraid to make a sound. "When I'm gone, don't grieve too much," Grandpa spoke quietly but firmly. "I've lived a good life. Longer than many of my friends. And know this, I've always been proud of you." "Grandpa, please don't talk like that," Laura said, a lump rising in her throat, making it hard to speak. "Listen, it's important." He squeezed her hand more tightly. "In my wardrobe, in the bottom drawer, there's an old wooden box. It's yours. Only you will need it." "Grandpa, I don't need anything. I just want you to get better." Tears streamed down Laura's cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. "One day you'll understand," he said, leaning back on the pillow, clearly tired from talking. "Now let's talk about something cheerful. Tell me about your thesis." Laura tried to tell him about her work, her plans for the future, but her voice trembled, and her thoughts kept returning to Grandpa's words. She didn't want to think about him leaving. Not now, just when she was stepping into her adult life. That evening, as she was leaving the hospital, she kissed her grandfather on the forehead. "See you tomorrow, Grandpa. I'll come early." "See you tomorrow, sweetheart," he smiled his kind, familiar smile. "And don't ever forget, I love you. I've always loved you." Those were the last words he ever spoke to her. During the night, he suffered a second, more severe stroke. And by the time Laura arrived at the hospital in the morning, he was gone. She stood by the hospital bed, now freshly made, unable to believe it was over. It felt as if any moment Grandpa would walk into the room, smile his warm smile, and say, "Why so sad, Laura? Everything will be all right." A nurse touched her gently on the shoulder. "You need to go to the administration office to complete the paperwork." The next few days passed in a fog. Filling out paperwork, finding money for the funeral, calling her parents. Laura moved through it all mechanically, completing every task without allowing herself to fall into despair. Her parents arrived the next day. Her mother was flustered, her father was all business. "How did it happen?" her mother asked, sitting down awkwardly on the edge of a kitchen chair. Laura told them about Grandpa's illness, the 2 weeks in the hospital, and their final conversation. Her voice was steady, only her fingers, clutched around a cup of cold tea, trembled. "My God," her mother sighed. "Who would have thought? Dad was always so strong." "He was 78, Sandra," her father said, standing by the window. "At that age, strokes and heart attacks aren't exactly surprising." Still, her mother shook her head. "Laura, how are you? Are you all right?" It was the first time they had asked about her well-being in all these years apart. Laura shrugged. "How can I be all right? Grandpa's dead." Her mother awkwardly touched her hand. "Yes, of course." A foolish question. An awkward silence followed. Then her father cleared his throat. "We'll help with the funeral, of course. And we'll need to decide what to do with the apartment and his things. His things? Laura lifted her head. What things? Well, Dad's things. Our things, her mother hesitated. Some of our old stuff was stored here too. Laura said nothing. She didn't care what happened to the things, to the apartment, to anything material. The important thing was that Grandpa was gone, and that was unbearable. The funeral was held 2 days later. The day was overcast but dry. Surprisingly, many people came, neighbors from the apartment building and the country house, former colleagues, a few of Laura's old classmates who came to support her. Ramon came too, tall, well-dressed, in an expensive suit. He stood off to the side awkwardly, not knowing what to say to the sister he hadn't seen in years. "I'm sorry," he finally said, approaching Laura after the ceremony. "Grandpa was a good man." "He was," Laura nodded, staring at the fresh mound of earth. "If you need anything, help or whatever." "Thank you, Ramon," she looked him in the eyes for the first time. "I'll manage." After the funeral, everyone gathered in Grandpa's apartment. Their neighbor Elisa had set the table. People brought pies, fruit. They spoke of Grandpa, remembered his kindness, his willingness to help, his gifted hands. Laura listened and realized just how many people had loved and respected her grandfather. "German helped me build my fence," said an elderly neighbor from the country house. "He wasn't young anymore, but he worked side by side with me. And he didn't take a penny, just said, 'Tomas, just bring me a bottle of your homemade liquor. We'll drink it together.' And he made me bookshelves for my granddaughter," Elisa added. "Beautiful ones, with carvings. All the neighbors are jealous. And he never charged a thing." "It's people like him who keep the world going," someone said, and everyone nodded in agreement. Laura's parents sat off to the side, awkwardly accepting condolences from people they barely knew. Ramon kept glancing at his watch, clearly uncomfortable. When everyone left, her father cleared his throat. "Right, we need to deal with business. The notary will come tomorrow to read the will. Dad definitely left a will." "A will?" Laura lifted her head. "What will? Grandpa didn't have anything." "What do you mean?" Her father gestured around the room. "The apartment, the country house, the car, even if it's old, it still runs. And other property too." Laura shook her head tiredly. "Do whatever you want. I don't care." The next morning the notary arrived, a lean middle-aged man with a briefcase. They gathered in the living room, Laura on the couch, her parents in the armchairs, Ramon on a chair from the kitchen. So, the notary cleared his throat, pulling documents from his case. "I will now read the last will and testament of German Enriquez, signed 3 months ago." He unfolded the paper and began to read. "I, German Enriquez, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare my will." The apartment was left to Laura's parents. The country house, to her aunt, who hadn't even shown up at the funeral. The car, to Ramon. And to Laura, Grandpa left only one thing, a personal item, a wooden box, handcrafted. Ramon couldn't suppress a smirk. "That's it? A box? I thought Grandpa was rich or something, always saving up." "Ramon." His mother snapped, though her voice lacked real reproach. Laura rose silently and went to the wardrobe. Pulling open the bottom drawer, she retrieved the box and pressed it to her chest. It was an old wooden thing, intricately carved. Grandpa had made it himself many years ago and had always kept something inside, never showing it to anyone. "Is that really everything?" her father asked the notary. "No bank accounts, no securities. Everything is listed in the will," the notary said, gathering his papers. "If anything else turns up, it will be divided according to the law." When the notary left, her father rubbed his hands briskly. "Right, formalities over. Now we need to decide what to do with the apartment and the stuff." "The apartment's obvious," her mother said, looking around critically. "We'll sell it. Laura's still stuck in the dorm, and soon she'll graduate. Ramon needs a car. We need money for repairs. And the stuff? Ramon asked, already calculating what he could take for himself. We'll sort through it. Take what's valuable. Throw the rest away, her mother said briskly, as if she were talking about garbage, not her father's lifetime possessions. Laura sat hugging the box, listening to them as if from afar. It seemed sacrilegious to divide up Grandpa's world so quickly. I'll take his photos, she said quietly. And his books. Of course, her mother agreed easily. Take whatever you want, Laura. We don't mind. And where will you put them? Her father asked practically. Your dorm room is tiny. I'll figure something out, Laura said, rising to her feet. I have a meeting with my thesis advisor. Go, of course, her mother nodded. We'll handle things here. Tomorrow we'll come back and start clearing things out. Laura left the apartment, holding the box tightly against her chest. Outside, it was spring, bright, noisy, full of life. But inside Laura, it was winter, cold, empty, lifeless. She didn't go to her consultation. Instead, she wandered the streets for hours, not noticing the passers-by, the cars, the spring sunshine. When her legs finally began to ache from exhaustion, she took a taxi back to the dormitory. Her room was small and cramped, shared with a roommate who had gone home for the holidays. Now Laura was alone. She placed the box on the desk and stared at it for a long time, unable to open it. It felt like the last fragile thread connecting her to Grandpa, and she was afraid that by opening it, she would sever that link. Finally, gathering her courage, Laura turned the small key sticking out of the lock. The lid lifted softly. Inside, lined with faded velvet, lay a small collection, old photographs, a few coins, and an envelope. Laura carefully took out the photographs. There was Grandpa Young, in his military uniform, standing next to a tank, the same photo that had hung in the living room. There he was older, holding a baby girl in his arms, Laura's mother. There was her parents' wedding photo, young, beautiful, happy. And Laura's own first photo, a newborn swaddled in a blanket. There were many more pictures, a chronicle of their shared life. Laura on her first day of school. Laura picking strawberries at the country house. Laura receiving an award at a school competition. Tears streamed down Laura's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. These tears were necessary, like rain is for dry soil. Then Laura picked up the envelope. On it, in her grandfather's familiar handwriting, were the words, "To Laura, my dearest one." Inside was a folded sheet of paper. Laura unfolded it and began to read. My dearest granddaughter. If you are reading these lines, it means I am no longer with you. Please, don't grieve too much. I lived a long and, on the whole, happy life. The happiest years were those I spent with you. You became more than a granddaughter to me. You were my joy, my comfort in old age, my hope for the future. I watched you grow, watched your character and beliefs take shape, and I rejoiced that you were becoming a true human being in the highest sense of the word. Forgive me for not being able to give you material wealth. Our life was modest, sometimes hard, but I hope it was filled with the most important things, love and respect for each other. Press on the bottom of the box. Laura tore her eyes from the letter and inspected the box. The bottom did look slightly different, a different shade of wood, barely noticeable unless you looked closely. She pressed on it, and there was a soft click. The bottom lifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small key and another letter. With trembling hands, Laura unfolded the paper. My dear Laura, if you found this letter, it means everything is going according to plan. Forgive me for the little trick with the will, but I knew your parents well and understood they wouldn't leave it alone otherwise. This key is for a safety deposit box at Northern Bank. There you will find your real inheritance. Many years ago, while working as a military engineer, I patented a few inventions that brought in considerable income. Your parents don't know about this. I saw how money could change people, and I didn't want them to change even more. All these years, I've been setting funds aside for you, knowing that one day, you would make your dream come true. Do you remember how we used to talk about a school for talented children from low-income families? Now you have the chance to create it. Be happy, my girl. Your grandpa, who will always be with you. Laura read the letter over and over again, unable to believe her eyes. Her frugal, modest grandfather had all this wealth hidden away, and kept it secret, even from her. She picked up the little key, shiny and engraved with a number. What secrets did it guard? What true inheritance was waiting for her in that bank? That night, Laura couldn't sleep. Thoughts swirled in her head, memories overwhelmed her in waves. Now many things made sense: Grandpa's quiet knowledge of financial matters, his unexpected birthday gifts, his calm confidence about the future despite his small pension. In the morning, taking her passport and the key, she headed to Northern Bank, a solid building in the city center with marble columns and heavy bronze doors. "How can I help you?" asked a young woman at the information desk, giving Laura a curious glance. "I have a key to a safety deposit box," Laura said, holding it out. "I'd like access to it." The woman examined the key carefully. "You need the safe deposit department. 3rd floor, left from the elevator. Do you have your documents?" "Yes, of course," Laura said, touching her bag nervously where her passport was. On the 3rd floor, a middle-aged man in a flawless suit greeted her. "Laura Sevilla?" he asked after checking her documents. "Yes, we have a box registered under your name. Please follow me." They passed through several secured doors, each opened with a special card, and entered a spacious room lined with metal boxes. "Here's your box," the man indicated one of them. "Insert your key and turn it. I'll leave you alone so you can go through the contents. When you're done, just press this button." Left alone, Laura took a deep breath and inserted the key. It turned easily, and the door swung open. Inside was a large leather folder. Laura pulled it out and opened it. The first thing she saw was a bank statement. The figure made her gasp. She had only seen such amounts in movies or read about them in books. Next were documents for shares in various companies: oil, tech, banking. Another bank account. Insurance policies. And finally, a title deed for a 5-hectare plot of land in a picturesque area near a lake. Attached to the documents was another note. "Laura, don't be surprised. I lived modestly not because of poverty, but out of principle. I believe a person doesn't need excess to be happy. But I always knew you would put these resources to good use. Use them wisely. Not for yourself, for others. There lies true happiness." Laura sat motionless, unable to move. Thousands of thoughts spun in her head. Why had Grandpa kept this a secret? Why had they lived so modestly when they could have had so much more? Why hadn't he spent anything on himself or his health? And yet, the answers came almost immediately. Grandpa had always said that true wealth wasn't money, it was the ability to appreciate what you have. He had seen how money could change people, and not for the better. He had taught her to value simple joys: the taste of ripe strawberries, the sound of summer rain, a good book, a heartfelt conversation. He wanted her to grow up a person, not a consumer. And it seemed he had succeeded. When the first shock passed, Laura carefully put the documents back in the folder and pressed the call button. The bank employee appeared almost instantly. "Finished?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. Tell me, how do I manage this inheritance? I've never handled anything like this before." The man smiled. "At our bank, we have a private banking department. They can help you with all financial matters. Would you like me to arrange a meeting?" Laura nodded. "Yes, please. But not today. I need time to think." "Of course. When you're ready, just call this number." He handed her a business card. Outside the bank, Laura didn't know where to go. The world around her seemed different, brighter, louder, more frightening. She was just an ordinary student, preparing to become a primary school teacher, and now she had suddenly become, what? An heiress? Her feet carried her to the park where she and Grandpa had often walked. Laura sat on their favorite bench by the pond and pulled out the documents again, leafing through them, trying to grasp the scale of the change in her life. The land particularly drew her attention. 5 hectares, a huge space. Perfectly located, close to the city but in a clean, natural environment, near a lake with good transport links. An ideal place for a school. A school, their shared dream. They had often talked about it, a place where talented children from modest families could receive quality education, develop their abilities, without feeling like outcasts for lacking trendy clothes or the latest gadgets. Laura remembered her own school years, the teasing from classmates over her outdated clothes, not being able to join them at expensive cafes, not having the latest phones. She knew exactly how it felt to be different, and not in a good way. Grandpa wanted me to create this school, she thought. It was his wish, our wish. The thought solidified. Yes, that's exactly what she would do. She would use the inheritance not for herself, but for others. She would create the school they had dreamed about, where children would learn not only science but kindness, compassion, and true values. That evening, her phone rang, her mother, unexpectedly concerned. "Laura, where are you? We've been calling all day." "Sorry, Mom, I was busy," Laura said, avoiding details. "We went through the apartment today. There's just a few of your old school notebooks and books left. Will you come pick them up?" "Yes, thank you," Laura answered absently, her mind on her plans. "Maybe you could stop by for dinner?" her mother asked, her voice unusually uncertain. Laura hesitated. After everything, after years of indifference, this sudden care felt strange. But then she remembered Grandpa's words about forgiveness, about not living with resentment in her heart. "All right, Mom. Tomorrow evening, if that's okay." "Perfect. We'll expect you at 6. The next day, Laura returned to the bank for her meeting with a financial advisor. A young man named Aaron explained various financial tools, investment options, ways to manage capital. Laura listened carefully, took notes, and asked questions. "You have a very sensible approach," Aaron said as they finished the meeting. "Many people, after receiving such an inheritance, immediately start spending wildly." "I had a good teacher," Laura smiled, thinking of Grandpa. After the bank, she went to visit the land. It was a sunny but cool April day. After getting off the bus, she walked about a kilometer down a country road until she reached the edge of a forest. This, according to the documents, was the start of her land. It was even better than she had imagined. A gentle slope leading down to a lake, a pine forest on one side, an open meadow on the other. Silence, fresh air, birdsong. Laura slowly walked the property. Plans were already forming in her mind. Here will be the main school building. Over there, the sports fields. And here, a garden and orchard where children can learn to grow fruits and vegetables. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered, gazing at the lake sparkling in the evening sun. "Thank you for everything." That evening, Laura went to her parents' house feeling lighter. For the first time in a long while, she felt whole, knowing where she was headed and what she needed to do. Her mother opened the door. She looked different, hair done, a touch of makeup, a festive dress. "Laura, come in, we've been waiting." The table in the living room was set with their best dishes, the ones they only brought out at New Year's. "What's the occasion?" Laura asked, surprised. "We just wanted to have a family dinner," her father answered, coming from the kitchen with a bottle of wine. "After everything that's happened, we've been thinking a lot, Laura. About you. About our relationship." Her mother nervously twisted a napkin in her hands. "We realize we weren't the best parents. And we'd like to make it right. If you'll let us." Laura looked at them, suddenly older, uncertain, seeking reconciliation. Maybe Grandpa's death had forced them to re-examine their values. Or maybe it was a moment of weakness that would pass. But something in their eyes, genuine remorse, hope, touched her heart. I don't hold a grudge, she said softly. Grandpa taught me to forgive. Her mother burst into tears and hugged her tightly for the first time in years. She smelled of the same perfume she had worn when Laura was little, and that scent suddenly brought Laura back to a distant childhood when life had been simpler, when she didn't yet know you could be unwanted in your own family. Dinner conversation started awkwardly. They talked about the weather, about health, about small things. Then her mother asked, "How's your studying? Your thesis is soon, right?" "Yes," Laura nodded. "The defense is in a month. I'm writing about new methods for working with children from disadvantaged backgrounds." "You always loved children," her mother smiled. "I remember how you used to play with your dolls, always teaching them something." "And what are your plans after college?" her father asked, placing more salad on her plate. "Will you work at a school?" Laura hesitated for a moment, wondering whether to tell them about the inheritance, about her plans to build her own school. But something held her back. It was too early. First, she needed to see how sincere their remorse was, how real their desire was to rebuild their relationship. "Maybe," she answered evasively. "I have some ideas, but it's too soon to talk about them." "If you need any help, financial or otherwise, we're here," her father began. "We're not rich, but—" "Thank you, Dad," Laura interrupted gently. "I'll manage. But I appreciate the offer." After dinner, as they were drinking coffee and eating cake, the doorbell rang. It was Ramon, tall, well-dressed, in an expensive suit. He hugged their mother, shook hands with their father, and then awkwardly nodded to Laura. "Hey, little sister. It's been a long time." "Hey, Ramon," Laura smiled, trying to push aside the sudden tension. Ramon sat next to her. "Listen, I wanted to apologize for that time at the summer house. I was a stupid teenager and said a lot of dumb things." "It's forgotten," Laura waved it off. "It was a long time ago. And also," he lowered his voice, "I know our parents didn't really take care of you. I just want you to know. I wasn't part of that. I was a kid. I didn't understand." "I know, Ramon," she said, looking him straight in the eyes for the first time. "It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way it happened." His face lit up. "Thank you. You know, I thought about you a lot. I used to ask about you, but Mom and Dad always said you were doing fine, that you chose to live with Grandpa." "I did," Laura nodded, though she knew that wasn't the whole truth. "I was happy with him. He was a wonderful man," Ramon said, surprisingly sincerely. "I see that now. When we visited the summer house, he tried to teach me important things. And I just laughed. Foolish." They talked late into the night, for the first time in years, like a real family. Laura felt something changing, something important taking shape between them. And she thought, maybe Grandpa was right. Maybe nothing mattered more than forgiveness and the ability to start over. When she left, she hugged her mother and father, shook Ramon's hand, and felt a strange sense of relief, as if a heavy weight had lifted from her shoulders. "Grandpa, do you see?" she thought, looking up at the starry sky. "I think we're going to be okay." Back at her dorm, lying on the narrow bed, Laura thought about the future. Now she had a clear goal, the means to achieve it, and, it seemed, a family she could share her success with. "I won't let you down, Grandpa," she whispered as she fell asleep. "I'll do everything you wanted. And even more." The month after discovering the inheritance flew by in a whirlwind. Laura graduated with honors and was offered positions at several schools, but she politely declined. She had her own path. She rented a small, clean, bright apartment near the city center, overlooking a park. Nothing luxurious, but after the dormitory, it felt like a palace. She moved some of Grandpa's things there, his books, photographs, and his favorite armchair. Work on the school project began immediately after graduation. Laura found an architectural firm specializing in educational institutions and explained her idea. A school for talented children from low-income families, she explained to the chief architect, a gray-haired man with thoughtful eyes. Not elite, but offering high-quality education, professional teachers, and an individual approach for each child. The work started in earnest. The architect surveyed the site, took measurements, and discussed layouts. Laura participated in every meeting, delving into the details, never hesitating to suggest changes. "We need more windows here," she said, studying the classroom plans. "Children should see nature, the sky, the trees. And the ceiling should be higher, so it doesn't feel like a cage." At the same time, she was studying teaching methodologies and assembling a team. She sifted through hundreds of resumes, conducted interviews, looking not just for professionals, but for kindred spirits. "Why do you want to work at this school?" she asked every candidate. And she chose those who spoke not about salary, but about children, about their development, about making education accessible and excellent for everyone. One evening, as Laura sorted through yet another stack of documents, the phone rang. "Laura?" Her mother's voice was anxious. "Your father and I were talking. Maybe you could come over? We're worried about you." Her relationship with her parents was slowly improving. Her mother called almost every day. Her father helped with some legal matters. Even Ramon showed interest, visiting now and then to check on her progress. "Sure, Mom. I'll come by," Laura said, closing her laptop. "And I have news." At her parents' house, they welcomed her warmly, almost festively. Her mother bustled in the kitchen. Her father asked questions about her work. During dinner, Laura decided it was time to tell them. "I'm building a school," she said, sipping her coffee. "For gifted children from low-income families." Silence fell. Her parents exchanged glances. "A school?" her father repeated. "What do you mean, building?" Laura took a deep breath and told them everything, about the box, the hidden compartment, Grandpa's inheritance, the land, and her plans. "I can't believe it," her mother pressed her hands to her chest. "Your grandfather. He had that kind of money. And he kept it secret?" "He didn't want it to change how people treated him," Laura said softly. "He saw how money affects people and was afraid of that." Her father leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "So all those years, he lived modestly not because he had to, but because he chose to? Incredible. And now you're using that money for the school? Not for yourself?" her mother asked. "Yes," Laura nodded. "It was Grandpa's and my dream. And I'm going to make it real." Tears shimmered in her mother's eyes. "You're so much like him. The same kindness. The same determination." "If you need help," her father said suddenly. "Legal advice, organizational support, I'm ready." "Me too," her mother added. "I used to work as a school secretary. I can handle paperwork." Laura looked at them with surprise and gratitude. Maybe Grandpa had been right, there was good in everyone. Sometimes, you just needed to give them a chance to show it. "Thank you," she smiled. "I'll be glad for any help." Construction progressed quickly. By autumn, the foundation was laid. By winter, the walls stood tall. By spring, interior work began. Laura spent most of her time at the construction site, overseeing every detail. In a nearby town, she rented an office where her team gathered, teachers, psychologists, methodologists. They developed curricula, prepared teaching materials, and created a system for selecting students. "We're not just looking at grades," Laura said at one meeting. "We care about motivation, potential, the desire to learn. Every child is talented in their own way. Our task is to help them discover it." By summer, the school was almost ready, a modern 3-story building of glass and wood, harmoniously blending with the landscape. Spacious classrooms with large windows, science labs with state-of-the-art equipment, a library with a computer center, a sports complex, a cafeteria with its own bakery. "What should we name it?" Ramon asked one day. He had unexpectedly become passionate about the project and was helping with marketing. Laura thought, looking at the blank golden letters above the entrance, waiting for a name. Legacy, she said confidently. The Legacy School for Gifted Children. The grand opening took place at the end of August. Journalists from local papers came, officials from the education department, future students with their parents. Laura was nervous but hid it well. Today we are opening not just a school, she began her speech, standing before the red ribbon, but a door to the future for children who otherwise might never have had the chance to realize their potential. She spoke of the school's philosophy, the principles of selection, the team of qualified teachers. But she didn't mention Grandpa or the inheritance, it was too personal. When she finished, applause rang out. Laura glanced around and saw her parents standing in the front row. Her mother discreetly wiped away tears. Her father looked at her with open pride. "And now," Laura said, taking the scissors, "I declare the Legacy School for Gifted Children officially open." The ribbon was cut. The doors swung open. People streamed inside, admiring the bright corridors, spacious classrooms, and modern facilities. Laura stood back, watching. Ramon came up beside her. "You know, little sister, I never said this before, but I'm proud of you," he said awkwardly, hugging her. "What you've done, it's incredible." "Thank you," she smiled warmly, feeling something beautiful spread in her chest. "But it's not just my doing. It's Grandpa's too." "Yes, Grandpa," Ramon nodded. "He always believed in you." And he was right. Their parents joined them. Her mother hugged Laura tightly. Her father shook her hand. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," her mother whispered. "So proud." On September 1st, the school welcomed its first 120 students, children from all backgrounds, selected not only by grades but by interviews and evaluations. Laura personally greeted each one, memorizing names, offering words of encouragement. In the chaos of the day, she didn't notice how evening fell. When the last child left with their parents, she climbed to the school's rooftop observation deck. The sun was setting behind the lake, painting the water gold. The trees rustled in the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang. Laura pulled a small photograph from her pocket, Grandpa, young, standing by a tank, the same picture that once hung in his living room. "You see, Grandpa?" she whispered, looking at the photo. "We did it. Our dream came true." It seemed the photo grew a little warmer in her hands, as if Grandpa had heard her, smiling his kind smile. Voices called to her from below, her parents and Ramon, waiting to celebrate the first day together. Laura tucked the photograph safely away and headed for the stairs. Ahead lay a lot of work, many plans, many hopes. But she knew she was walking the right path. Grandpa's true legacy wasn't the money or the property. It was the values he had instilled in her: kindness, diligence, the ability to see the good in people, the power to forgive and to love unconditionally. And now she could pass that legacy on to her students, who, like her once, needed support and faith in their abilities. As she descended the stairs to her waiting family, Laura smiled. Life went on, not just with memories of the past, but filled with hope for the future. Hope Grandpa had left her, hidden in a wooden box and a little key.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.